AI-powered classroom disruptors, episode 1, a good start.
Hello, Maurieo. Welcome to my podcast. Today I've got Paddy Ward here with me, who's very interested in AI. In fact, has encouraged me somewhat, and just wanted to get his insights into what AI developments are happening in education, and in particular vocational education. So
thanks, Maurieo.
Yeah, he's going to do most of the talking. I'll just add my little 2 pence in.
The people who know me won't be surprised that I'm going to do all the talking. It's been one of my weaknesses my whole life. So thank you.
Well, good.
We've been having these sort of conversations for quite some time, haven't we? And they've been sort of very varied all over the joint. One of the things that's really been front and centre for me just recently with the whole AI thing, particularly I think, when you say vocational, I think this is something that is specific in many ways to vocational students, and that is, a lot of our students can't afford a paid version of AI. And the conventional sort of wisdom on that is that in order to make access to AI equitable, organisations like ourselves should be providing a paid solution for students while they study with us. And that makes absolute sense. But at the end of the day, if you really think about it, when they join us, they can't afford AI. They may spend 6 months with us, or a year or 3 years even with us. And when they finish that, they're possibly worse off than they were to start with, because they've now got student loan debt as well and all sorts. And so they may well still not be able to afford a paid AI tool. And in that intervening time, the pace of AI development, they will have become dependent on the tool that we gave them, potentially, and not have become as engaged with all the vast changes that are going on in the sort of space at this point in time. So is that equity of access creating dependence on another tool? I don't really think that is.
Well, I sort of looked at what, I've bought the paid version, I've bought it, but I started with the one, and from my point of view, I've got the paid one, I use it. I know that you've encouraged me to look at all sorts of other ones, but I've just stuck with the one paid one because, payments and internet, it can be a bit problematical. So I've just stuck with what I've known. And at the moment, obviously I'm looking at other things and where will I spend my AI dollars, because I'm definitely hooked on it. And I think that will possibly occur with our students. So I think we're doing them a good service by introducing them to it. And I think as a global thing, AI is said to be very equitable in that it brings the power of large computing power to the sort of masses very relatively cheaply.
Relatively,
yes.
But I mean, again, it is relative. And if you're a person who is having to make a decision between the rent and food, for instance, the last thing that's on your mind is an AI tool. And I mean, a lot of our particularly vocational students who come from lower socioeconomic groups, just being straight up about it, and have been through a decile 1 to 5 education system in New Zealand, a lot of them will not be in a position, maybe for quite some time, to ever think of those kind of things as anything but luxuries. Now, I mean, I have to say, I have tried to give up all the paid ones, but I have not given up my mid-journey, and I have not given up the AI that I access via my Notion database, because I will not be without those two. But those are sort of peripheral for me in some ways. But the core things like ChatGPT, I've actually started using the free version, and I love ChatGPT, but I also now use the free Claude 3.5 for various things. And the reason I keep changing is because everything keeps offering new shiny bells and whistles, and I want to try out as many of these as possible. And I actually think that's one of the key things we have to do. This kind of speaks to the entire idea of engaging our students with free tools and getting them into a mindset that is agile so that they can consistently jump between one tool and another, because at the end of the day, the underlying principles are all the same. That you need to be able to engage and use these tools effectively and reliably more than anything because of the vagaries of them.
But one of the first stories that you told me was how you developed a diet, shopping, housing, sort of housekeeping use for ChatGPT. Was that the free version or the?
That was free.
Yeah. And in doing that, you were able to save yourself like $100 a week on the groceries, and have a slightly healthier lifestyle as well.
Way healthier. Yeah. So that's right.
I mean, by exposing these people to these sort of tools at that basic level, we may actually help them to generate the ability to pay for
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, those sort of things are, but I think that's absolutely where you want people to be in. They need to have that breadth of knowledge to be able to identify the opportunities to make a financial gain, for instance. And I mean, I think most of us will have one eye on the potential of this to make us independent earners. You know?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's one of the guiding things for me. I'm convinced that there's ways and means that we can use these things to make a dollar, and to fit in with our particular peculiarities. Like, for instance, I'm not as dexterous as I used to be, so I can use these things, I can achieve things, and maybe whereas there's other things I can't do, so I think it gives a lot of that flexibility in a lot of different areas. So
I think that's a key point. I think one of the interesting things about AI, something more than interesting, it's utterly fascinating, is that it is so many things to so many people. And how you engage with it really does determine the value that you can get out of it. And I think that point that you make of that there are these ways that people can make money, and there are going to be more and more ways, I think that fundamentally comes down, the ability to identify those opportunities comes down to a broad familiarity with tools. You need to be able to understand a range of different things, and to be able to identify potentially new tools.
Well, you need to be in the zone.
You do.
You need as approximate as you can be to it is where it's going to happen. And what excites me is the fact that, particularly with our young students, they come at things from a totally different angle. So they might see an opportunity which might pass me by, and so the more people we expose to it, the more potential it brings to them.
We've been talking about being a learning organisation for as long as I've been here, and I think there's a difference between talking about being a learning organisation and being a true learning organisation, because a true learning organisation is one where the staff learn as much from the students, really, in many ways as the students can learn from us.
Well, one of the big struggles that I'm having with AI is I can show it to my students, but to actually use it in live in the purpose of my learning is where I'm really that's where I'm struggling to do it. I mean, I can show them you can do this with it, you can do that with it, and you can do that, but to actually sort of use it consistently, that's where I need to do some work. In
that's
that area.
A really interesting point, and I'm very much in the same place. I spend a lot of time being just blown away by the sort of nebulous wonder of AI and just thinking this is incredible. But I always struggled to find that sort of interface between wonder and utility, being able to sort of apply this stuff to day-to-day stuff. And the problem was that some of the conversations that we had early on, when we have been sort of meeting like this for a long time, and we've had some good contrary voices involved in this, which have raised issues that I'm now much more conscious of. And I think what's happened is I've become more cynical about the veracity or the reliability or the usefulness of AI in general. So I think coming at it
You've
through
backed
a sort of,
off a little.
Yeah, and I'm coming at it through
yeah.
maybe a more objective lens, I guess, rather than just being wowed and amazed by it. But I still have that.
I still enjoy the let's see what happens aspect of it, and immediately, and that's probably the most addictive part of it for me. What happens if I do this?
Definitely.
Like I said to you, for the name for this podcast, I put it in and said we're doing it, and it came up with this one, which was artificial insights, which really intrigued me. I thought, well, where can we go with that?
I mean, yes, I think that's right. There are so many ways to just experiment and try. But that's, you talked about being in the zone. That is the key, isn't it? And we talk, and I've been talking a lot, and I've been talking to other people about people who are out in the front, on the leading edge of this, as wayfinders, people who are motivated by their passion or just their sense of wonder. I mean, because I do have this amazing sense of wonder.
For me, it's very much a thinking tool. It's a tool that I use to think and try and move forward, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's something that our students, perhaps an area that they need to work on. A lot of them sort of like to be guided, whereas I find this.
When you say guided, you mean spoon-fed.
Yes, well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yes.
Well, something that I found very interesting in the last couple of months is that I've started running workshops for students as well as for staff. And there's a very distinct difference in approach taken by students and that taken by staff. So staff are more reticent, somewhat, about getting involved with it sometimes. But when they get it, and they will take quite a literal and methodical approach to understanding it if they're coming along to a workshop. If they're not, then they're just not. Whereas students seem to approach it more intuitively, as you would possibly expect, I guess. And they already are using it in a very wide range of applications. So one of the interesting things is that in the UK, there was a big piece of research done by JISC, who have a framework called the AI maturity model, which is about looking at how to integrate AI into tertiary education in general, not just vocational. And they first looked at student use of AI in September last year and found that the principal use was answer generation. So in other words, sort of plagiarism, cheating, and writing your assessments for you. By May this year, when they refreshed the research, that had shifted considerably. And then by September this year, when they've just updated that research, there's been a significant shift. So now student use of AI is far more nuanced, far more mature in actual fact. They're using it for so many different things, and this idea of using it as an answer generating tool has dropped from the top of the list a year ago to way down, almost insignificant. And they're doing things like, obviously, social media content creation, videos as well as images and posts, but also they're using it for mental health well-being and personal development and things like that, which is fascinating. But what I found with them in terms of their practice is that although they're more mature in the way they're using it than staff on the whole, and although they're engaging more widely in use cases and tools, what they're not doing is understanding fundamental principles of how to use the tools well. And I think in the long term, that can disadvantage them.
Definitely, yeah, there's some benefits from doing that or learning that along
Getting
the
the
way.
structure, eh?
Certainly,
Yeah.
yeah. For me, I think AI is not the problem; it's the answer. Particularly in
Very
that proctoring sort of, plagiarism word, which I have to. I think it should be beeped out of this podcast. But I mean, that's, and the difference I find the students to be very accepting, and I find some of my friends and some of my colleagues, they tend to want to pick out the holes in it. I mean, it's not perfect. It does draw people with 6 fingers and 4 eyes, but it's so much better than what I would do with a bloody crayon on a piece of newsprint.
Yeah.
And so it's those things there, and it's moving ahead at a rate of knots.
I think that is so fundamentally important that people forget. Whatever shortcomings AI has now, today is the worst it's ever going to be, and tomorrow it's going to be better. And I don't mean tomorrow in some sort of vague way. I mean tomorrow. And Notebook LM from Google is my latest obsession.
Yes.
It's a free tool, and it differentiates itself from the large language models in that it uses a small language model that's trained specifically for data analytics and that sort of thing, and works on your own sources. So using a method called source grounding, it will only reference your resources, and that's a very much more reliable tool.
I used it after you told me the other day. I used it, and I fed in one of my assignments, and my assignment was for students to draw one of our picnic tables outside, and they had to go and measure it up. And the scenario was, it was sort of like had an industrial espionage aspect to it, and that they were doing it up so someone else could make it, but they had to make an exact copy of it. Right. And I needed aspects of, they had to measure it and do quantify it and cost it, and also give me an invoice for the time they spent doing it.
Oh, nice.
And I put all this in the LM, it did the little podcast thing it made. And it told me all about this fantastic assignment. Even I was impressed in my own assignment, but it was spot on and really promoted it really well. It was quite awesome.
And that illustrates the point actually, because I have Notebook LM is an immensely powerful tool, and you can have 100 notebooks, and each notebook can have 25 million words in, so 2.5 billion words if you max it out, which is beyond our comprehension, beyond my comprehension for sure. And that is, for me, the key power of it. But what has captivated the internet and Discord and all the other channels is the ability to generate these podcasts. They call them podcasts, which they're audio deep dives, and they are pretty cool. But when they first released it, with this format, which was a month ago or so, that audio was very vague, and it would just take in the totality of everything you put in, and you had no control. They've just released an update to it, where you can now change the tone of voice, the approach, and you can actually specify specific aspects of your sources that you wanted to talk to. So that improvement from day to day, and I was working on it the other day as well, and suddenly realized that a new feature had popped up between going and adding one source and coming back. I could suddenly add YouTube videos and MP3 audio.
It takes the YouTube and where is it going? And it's free at the moment.
It's free.
And
now,
available.
So people keep saying to me, you're pushing Notebook LM because now we're trying to use it for teaching, we're using it for reference, we're using it in the library, and it's free. And everyone keeps saying, well, what happens when it's no longer free? Because at some point it probably won't be. Or Google will do what they do with so many things, and they will retire it and just keep some features and put them elsewhere. But I think the key is, we're no longer in that sort of world where we are either iPhone users or Android users, or whether we're Mac or Windows. We are now, we have to be platform, device, app agnostics.
But if it's free and they do close it down or whatever, people will still be looking for that functionality
somewhere else,
and they'll find it, or
That's
someone
right.
will develop it as as an add-on to ChatGPT or something like that, or whatever.
Exactly.
So it's maybe lost from Google, but it's not lost forever, and the ideas that it engenders will be.
That's the value. And that is the absolute key to this, is that we use it now as a free tool, because that means we can get broad engagement. And that broad engagement leads to volumes of knowledge that we then share. If we can share the learning from our students and that we share our learning with them, between us, that's a very powerful body of knowledge. And it doesn't matter if the specific tool disappears, because we have the skill and the agility and resilience as a group of people, staff and students, to pivot to the next thing. And as long as there are students and staff who are wayfinders, who are out there checking out these new things, before Notebook LM disappears, we will already be ready to use the next thing and to just jump and move.
Well, I was just, looking before I came here, just to get some ideas. And where is AI? I tried to find some examples of where AI is being used in education and things like that. And it gave me a few. I just asked ChatGPT, because I've been using it now for my news. I just say, what are the top 10 news stories in New Zealand? And it comes up with them. Just on a wee side note, I asked it to sensationalise all the headlines and make them very dramatic, and that was quite fun. I quite enjoyed that. It was hilarious. But
if you can put a good spin on Seymour and the treaty problems, then
it just was devastating, and used all of the key words in the headlines. But one of the ones that intrigued me was because I've been this gamifying of education, and it came up with one called class something, like class format or something, and it was a way of using gaming. But when I looked at it, it said it used AI, but it's been going since 2013. So this AI, I think it's sort of crept up to us and then got a critical mass where people suddenly realised, and it's coming.
It's the frog in the boiling water. In the stove, on the stove, because we haven't noticed it. It has been incremental, but we hit a sort of I think the end of 22 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. That wasn't the beginning of generative AI, even, but it was certainly the beginning of actually democratization of AI, of generative AI.
Because it's, I mean, there are a lot of people that are a little bit anti it, but they sort of overlook the fact that they are actually using it without knowing it, which is quite ironic, really.
So whenever they say, I won't ever use AI, I don't tell them they've probably been using it in one form or another for a while. I mean, it underpins things like the algorithms for Google and your search and what you're seeing every day on your phone.
And where the sort of work is moving, what we define as work. I mean, it's taking away a lot of the mundane things out of our life and enabling us to focus on the high end sort of thing, and that's what I think. That's what helps to drag it along, because we don't have to do all the fancy calculations, and write all the reports to keep people happy and tick the boxes.
That's right. And this comes back directly actually to your point earlier about how we take this and actually make it a practical work tool. Because I see there's two elements to that. At first I was thinking the only way we're ever going to be able to really use this as an effective work tool is by cleansing all the data of anything sensitive, particularly where we work in tertiary education, and then looking at all of that. And I started thinking, there's less and less real utility for it until you see something like Notebook LM, which ring fences material, which makes it far more reliable, which provides you with the ability to make it even more reliable by cleaning the data before you put it in. And
but it hasn't, and I think in education, and particularly there, it hasn't really been around long enough for people to fully develop particular uses and it's changing so quickly that you know there's some of the things that you think are sort of stale before you get to deliver them and try them and you know go through their second cycle to really perfect them and get them on track.
That's right. Yeah, it's certainly very interesting where we are at the moment with it all, and whether or not the problem is, of course, that education is not one of the more go-ahead industries or sectors. It's quite hidebound.
Yeah, I always say if you want to make money, you've got to be where money is, and education is not an area where money is. We're always relying on handouts, and that's sort of brings us back to what we started with, is that it's free. We're always looking for the free options because in some cases that's our only option, and that's why we're trying to develop in that space and make it.
That's right. I think for a country like New Zealand, particularly, this is where the appeal is, because this is the number 8 wire mentality, absolutely personified. And this is, I think, this is what I know you enjoy most, and it's certainly the part of it I enjoy most, is the innovation. It's the chuck stuff up in the air and see what happens. And experimentation, and that's the fun.
And I've certainly had a lot of fun with ChatGPT, I can tell you.
I've also had a lot of frustration when I've been trying to do square peg into round hole stuff. And this is, I think, my key lesson at the moment is don't try and make it do something that it isn't designed to do directly.
Yes. No, I've had a few, in the graphic area, it's very hard to, it has a mind of its own, I feel. That's for sure. Yeah. All right.
Very good. So just coming back to reiterate, what I really think is that rather than providing a tool to our students that they will potentially become dependent on, that will in theory create equity of access, I think we need to focus really hard on creating a dynamic learning environment where we share knowledge with students, where students share knowledge with us, and we learn how to pivot and be agile users ourselves. We support our students to be agile learners, and that means a whole of organisation response to this. It means everyone supporting students, supporting each other, and that's what we've been saying.
And the flexibility to go where our students go too, I think will pay real dividends.
We've always avoided that. We've always said we're not going to use social media to teach because that's their space. But man, it's not anyone's space.
It's very hard to. I've been there. I believe that myself too. That I know we've tried through various things. Like I think we had a sort of a chat thing called Yammer or something like that. So we've tried all these other little pseudo social media, and the students don't pick them up
because
they go for
they go for what they want.
Go for the Instagram. It's like they don't wear the generic running shoes that I buy down at the warehouse. They're after the Nike and the Asics and all that sort of thing, and it's the same with social media, I think.
It is, but that is the essence, isn't it, of student-centred learning. We go to their space.
Yeah, that's right.
We teach it in a way that resonates with them, not in a way that makes it easy for us.
No. Interesting, but not easy.
No, but better to get out of our comfort zone than still be teaching Victorian and Edwardian methods.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much, Paddy. That was one of our more structured discussions, if you can believe that.
And less profane than usual as well.
Yes, we've toned it down. So, we'll see where it goes. Let's see what happens.
Excellent.
All right.
Cool.